Hi guys, I'm Mike and this is F1 Fanatics. Wow guys, what a qualifying we had there. Max Verstappen takes pole with an incredible 1:14.572 lap, breaking the previous lap record set by Sebastian Vettel in FP3 last year in the 1:16s. But that lap record was smashed about 4 or 5 times in qualifying. They were flying rounds and really competing, those top 5 drivers, with Verstappen managing to clinch that pole, Bottas coming in second, Hamilton not making the front row here, he was third. Leclerc, he was fourth, and Sebastian Vettel coming in fifth. Gasly again was kind of falling behind, but at least he qualified sixth, which is where he should be finishing in a Red Bull car that Max Verstappen has shown to be so strong here. And guys, it was just amazing, the kind of contest throughout. There were shocks in terms of who went out at certain stages. There were amazing laps, especially from the rookies that we'll get through to. We'll just have a quick note. Obviously, me and Ash weren't able to film our free practice video yesterday, but actually nothing really happened, or we couldn't take too much from free practice yesterday anyway, because it rained quite a lot and there wasn't actually a lot of track time for the drivers. So just for a note, it was Hamilton who topped FP1 and it was Pierre Gasly who topped FP2, and then coming into FP3 today, it was basically just an all-out pre-qualifying thrash out between all the teams, trying to get their spec absolutely right for qualifying that happened at 2 o'clock today. Because guys, it's so important to have track position here at Hungary. It's the Monaco without barriers. It's a difficult, notoriously difficult circuit to overtake on, and track position is absolutely everything. So nailing that qualifying lap, getting every position you can gain in qualifying is so important. But FP3 was actually pushed back by, there was an engine blowout in the Formula 2 and it mucked up a load of oil on the turn 5. He actually completed the corner, so on the racing line as well. So they had to come out and put a load of cement on it, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but that may have affected some of the drivers' time in this qualifying session. But guys, now we get into qualifying, having a full run through. So we look at Q1 first. The big shock we have to talk about is the honey badger himself, Danny Ricciardo. They saved this engine because they thought they were going to do well in Hungary, but he went out in Q1. It was a stack up between him and Perez. He tried to overtake Perez on the last corner going into the flying lap, and then he had to back off, made him lose temperature in his tyres, and that ultimately affected his lap, that he wasn't able to put in a good enough lap to push him into Q2. And so he was the first big exit in Q1. A shout out has to go to George Russell. For the first time this season, Williams haven't finished 19th and 20th. George Russell has qualified in P16. He has been on merit faster than Danny Rick, Sergio Perez, his teammate, who has constantly done it through all season. He continues that streak, and Lance Stroll, who continues to have an absolutely awful qualifying record, being knocked out in Q1 yet again. But what an incredible lap it was from George Russell. Maybe with that track evolution, if he'd waited a little bit longer, he might have snuck into Q2. But guys, Williams are going in the right direction. Absolutely fantastic drive from the previous F2 champion and young Brit driver. I mean, it shows what he can do when he's getting in a competitive car, and it's the first steps to getting Williams back competing in that midfield. Moving on to Q2, guys, and then it kind of compounded. Another poor kind of weekend, at least on a Saturday for Renault, with Hulkenberg also exiting in Q2. He qualifies P11, was close to getting into Q3, but just wasn't able to get the timing enough. We also lost both Toro Rossos in Albon and Kvyat. Albon out-qualifying his teammate in 12th, and Kvyat coming in at 13th. And then Giovinazzi in the Alfa Romeo, he qualified 14th. But Haas again, every weekend we seem to talk about their performance in some way. And Kevin Magnussen, who's running the new spec, the updates on the car that in theory should make the car quicker, He was P15 and Grosjean was, as we haven't talked about him yet, you might have guessed, has made it into Q3 on the Australia spec on the car that they started the season with. I mean, the design R&D team and engineers must be going, I don't know what's happening, because we're meant to be improving this car, but we're going backwards. We're making this car worse, and it is crazy fast. That is, although positive they've got a driver into Q3, it must be not positive for them to have Magnussen qualifying P15. Yeah, terrible. They really need to bash their heads together going into this summer break. Going into the big one then, into Q3, and we'll quickly run off the kind of best of the rest midfield runners. So we had Raikkonen qualifying in P10. We had Grosjean finishing in P9, and the McLarens finishing best of the rest, the only team to get both their cars into Q3 who weren't one of the big three teams. They finished P8 with Sainz being out-qualified by Lando Norris, who again put in an incredible lap, and he's been in his rookie season absolutely incredible in qualifying. I mean, it shows that Germany, he just couldn't get it together last weekend. That was a blip, because he is back to setting flying laps, guys. And yeah, what a lap to get himself in P7. Now, well, we probably should mention really Pierre Gasly, because he's in a Lincoln himself there. He managed to qualify P6. He wasn't really in that fight for guys who were fighting for pole between the big five. And now, guys, we talk about those big five. So Ferrari were so good in the first sector, but they were losing time to both Mercedes and Red Bull in the last two sectors, and it just wasn't good enough on this Saturday to be able to get there. But on this track, the first sector is probably the best places where you're going to get overtakes in the race, so you wouldn't discount them out of getting on the podium in the race and certainly challenging both Max and the Mercedes tomorrow in the race, because that long straight down to the first corner, you can brake late into that first corner and then accelerate out there. It's probably the point where they might risk it, especially that turn one, to try and get past someone. They really could do something in this race. I wouldn't necessarily say that they discount them out the race on their qualifying performance, and it was so close at the top. So it was Vettel 5th and Leclerc 4th. Then Lewis Hamilton, a track that he is so good at. He has got 6 poles here and 6 race wins. He has got 3rd, so he doesn't get on the front row today, and he looked pretty determined that he was going to kind of change that in the race. He wasn't in his normal chirpy responsive self in kind of post-qualifying things. He was frustrated that he wasn't on that front row. But because, like I said, he is so successful here at Hungary, you cannot discount him out the race tomorrow. But it's going to be difficult, because moving on to that front row, only split by less than 0.02 of a second, was Max Verstappen and Valtteri Bottas. Bottas is going to be so keen to finish ahead of his teammate going into summer break. With recent comments from Toto Wolff, he is really kind of under pressure with Ocon and George Russell kind of vying for that second seat Mercedes. Are they looking to the future? Bottas is a solid number 2 driver, but unless he starts showing that he can compete with Hamilton and push him, his seat might be up for grabs come the end of the season. I think it might be harsh, because we'll talk about it later. He's done well, and this P2 position in qualifying today was again another fantastic lap. And the Dutchman, the Flying Dutchman himself, what a lap by Max Verstappen. It was incredible. First man on the grid to break the 1:14 barrier there, getting a 1:14.572. New lap record, as I said there. Just an absolute incredible lap. He absolutely nailed it, guys. It was brilliant to watch. And going back to that cement on turn 5, they actually did on a little bit of analysis post-qualifying with Verstappen and Bottas. He just took his exit a little bit wider onto turn 5, so he avoided that cement, so therefore it wouldn't have affected him a little bit much, and Bottas drove all the way through it. So that might have been, there were a couple of other points on the lap, but that might have been the difference between securing pole position and Bottas just missing out, but in a very strong position, being second on that front row. And mention's got to go to, that is Max Verstappen's first ever pole, and he's the 100th different pole sitter in F1 history. And what a driver, and what a way to do it, guys. Absolutely incredible. Guys, we've got an absolutely amazing race ahead of us tomorrow. I think all 5 of those guys are going to be competing at the top. I expect McLaren to dominate that midfield, but it's going to be interesting as always to see how that develops. Strategy is going to be absolutely key. So guys, I bet like me you can't wait to get tuned in and wait to see what happens in that race tomorrow. So that was our qualifying reaction here. Guys, we will be back with our race reaction kind of couple of hours after the race tomorrow. We're excited for it. Ash is going to be doing that video. Guys, if you like what we do, give us a thumbs up. Comment below what you thought of that qualifying. I think it was probably the best qualifying of the season so far, because so many on that last lap could have just nicked pole. Even the Ferraris going, because they were so good in that first sector. It was just that last sector they lost time. So comment below what you think. Comment below what you think is going to affect the race ahead. I mean, guys, it was incredible. I'm just excited by it. I've just finished watching by it, so I'm just like, so pumped for Max to get that pole position. So comment below if you like what we do as well. Subscribe to the channel, go and click the button there and click the bell notification so you can be notified when we're releasing our next videos, guys. So join us for the race reaction tomorrow, and then I'll be back for Monday with our driver ratings for hopefully what should be an absolute incredible race. Guys, remember, F1 fans, keep racing.